I used to believe that when you pour your life's blood into building a home and a legacy for your family, the foundation you set will hold forever. I believed that loyalty was a promise written on the heart, not something that could be erased by a signature on a divorce document. But I learned the hard way that when greed, vanity, and shallow ambition take root in a person's mind, they will tear down the very house that sheltered them just to show off the ruins to strangers. My name is Arthur Vance. At 52 years old, I spent nearly 3 decades working as a structural engineer and commercial real estate developer. When my ex-wife, Victoria, and I married 28 years ago, we had almost nothing to our names. I worked grueling, 80-hour weeks on construction sites, saving every penny to found Vance Development. Over 25 years, I grew that small venture into a premier commercial builder, famous for designing luxury eco-resorts and private estates across the coastline. Everything I built for Victoria. I built her a breathtaking $4 million coastal estate sitting on 12 acres of private waterfront property. I funded her lavish lifestyle, covered her family's debt, paid for endless international vacations, and ensured she never had to worry about money for a single second of her existence. I thought we were partners for life. Then came Gabriel Sterling. Gabriel was a 40-year-old high-risk venture capitalist who moved into our social circle 2 years ago. He drove imported luxury cars, wore $5,000 tailored suits, and bragged endlessly at elite country clubs about his multi-million-dollar investment portfolio. Victoria met him at a charity gala that my company had sponsored, and within months, her attitude toward me turned into icy contempt. She began criticizing my appearance, making fun of my work boots and the practical clothes I wore to job sites. She started telling her high society friends that I was an unrefined, agging builder who was holding her back from stepping into true corporate power. To Victoria, a 52-year-old man who built real things with his hands was an obsolete obstacle. The ultimate betrayal happened on a rainy Tuesday evening. I returned home after an exhausting day conducting structural inspections on a bridge project, only to find Victoria sitting in our grand living room alongside Gabriel Sterling and her senior divorce attorney. Standing by the front entrance were 2 private security guards holding empty packing crates. Victoria didn't even stand up. Her lawyer slid a thick, blue legal portfolio across the marble table toward me. It was a formal divorce petition paired with an emergency spousal occupancy order. Victoria looked at me with a cold, venomous sneer and told me that she was filing for immediate divorce. She claimed that she had wasted nearly 30 years of her life with a boring, working-class contractor and that it was time she finally claimed what she deserved. She informed me that Gabriel was moving into the estate that night and that I had precisely 45 minutes to gather my clothes and get off the property. Gabriel stood up, adjusted his designer cufflinks, and laughed right into my face. He told me that at 52, I was washed up, old, and irrelevant. He boasted that he was taking my house, my wife, and my social standing, and advised me to go find a cheap rental apartment across town before he had security escort me out like a trespasser. My heart shattered, but right behind that heartbreak came an ice-cold, unbreakable clarity. I looked at Victoria, then at Gabriel, and then at the security guards by the door. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't throw a punch. I picked up my jacket, took my father's antique watch from my desk, and walked out into the downpour without saying a single word. They thought they had broken me. They thought an older man, stripped of his home and cast aside, would collapse into depression and accept defeat. They forgot one fundamental rule: never attempt to ruin a man who designed the very blueprints you are standing on. What Victoria and Gabriel had completely overlooked in their rush to steal my life was the financial reality of Gabriel's venture firm. Gabriel presented himself as a mega-millionaire, but the truth was far dirtier. His firm, Sterling Capital, was floating on $6 million in high-yield commercial loans issued by a private investment syndicate. Gabriel was facing a major debt refinancing deadline that very month, barely keeping his operations alive by shuffling investor funds. Furthermore, the $4 million waterfront estate Victoria thought she had claimed through spousal filing was held inside my private master land trust, a corporate trust created solely under my name and funded entirely by my independent construction equity. The residential lease Victoria relied on contained a strict clause. Any transfer of occupancy to an unapproved third party triggered an immediate default and complete revocation of residential rights. I didn't waste a single hour crying. I checked into a penthouse suite downtown and called my senior corporate attorney, Marcus Vance. Over the next 12 days, I mobilized my liquid reserves. I liquidated $6.5 million from my commercial development accounts and quietly bought out the entire $6 million debt portfolio of sterling capital directly from the investment syndicate. In a single, massive financial maneuver, I became Gabriel Sterling's sole, primary creditor. I held his loans, his default terms, and his personal guarantees directly in my hands. To celebrate their impending wedding and publicize Gabriel's takeover of my firm, Victoria and Gabriel decided to throw an extravagant $150,000 engagement gala inside the grand hall of my waterfront estate. They invited over 80 high society guests, city officials, and reporters, eager to show off their power and permanently humiliate me in front of the city. On the night of the gala, the estate was ablaze with golden lights. Expensive champagne flowed freely, and a string quartet played in the courtyard. Victoria was wearing a $25,000 designer gown, displaying a massive diamond ring Gabriel had purchased using borrowed company funds. Gabriel stood in front of the grand fireplace, holding a glass of scotch, boasting to the crowd about his new empire. At 8:30 p.m., the heavy double doors of the estate burst open. I walked into the ballroom wearing a sharp, custom dark navy suit, carrying myself with absolute authority. Flanking me were Marcus Vance, 2 state financial auditors, and 3 uniformed county sheriff deputies. The room fell dead silent. Victoria's face twisted with rage. She marched down the grand staircase, yelling at the top of her lungs, demanding to know how a broke, 52-year-old loser dared to step foot in her house. She screamed for security to throw me out. I stood my ground, completely calm, a cold, quiet smile resting on my face. Marcus Vance stepped forward, opened a thick leather binder, and stepped up to the main microphone stand on the stage. His booming voice echoed through the entire mansion. Marcus announced that effective as of 5:00 p.m. that afternoon, Arthur Vance had officially acquired 100% of the commercial debt notes held against Sterling Capital. He revealed that because Gabriel Sterling had defaulted on his financial obligations and committed loan misrepresentation, the debt had been placed in immediate acceleration. The entire ballroom erupted into gasps. Gabriel's face went from flushed red to ghostly white. He dropped his scotch glass, staring at Marcus in pure horror. Marcus then delivered the ultimate blow. He presented a court-issued writ of commercial asset foreclosure and an emergency eviction order for the entire estate. He informed Gabriel and Victoria that every personal asset tied to Sterling Capital, including Gabriel's sports cars, bank accounts, and the very estate they were standing in, was being seized immediately by my holding firm. The sheriff stepped forward, warning Gabriel and Victoria that if they did not hand over the keys and clear the property within 2 hours, they would be arrested on the spot for felony trespassing. In front of every politician, investor, and social peer they had tried to impress, Gabriel's fake empire dissolved into dust. High society guests immediately packed their coats and hurried out the doors to avoid the massive scandal. Victoria turned on Gabriel right there in the middle of the empty hall, screaming at him, calling him a fraud who had ruined her life. Gabriel collapsed onto the marble floor, burying his face in his hands, weeping uncontrollably as he realized he was completely bankrupted. The next morning, moving trucks cleared out their remaining personal items. Victoria called me dozens of times, leaving frantic voicemails, begging for mercy, crying that she had been manipulated and still loved me after 28 years. I didn't answer a single call. I let my legal team finalize the divorce. Victoria received 0 alimony due to fraud and corporate misconduct, leaving her forced to rent a small one-bedroom apartment on the edge of town and work as a receptionist to pay her legal bills. Gabriel fled the state to escape federal fraud investigations, his career permanently ruined. Today, at 52, I sit on the veranda of my fully restored waterfront estate, drinking my morning tea in absolute peace. Vance Development is more successful than ever, and I spend my time designing eco-friendly housing projects for families who value hard work, honesty, and true integrity. Sometimes people think that gray hair and a quiet voice mean a man is easy to destroy. They forget that the man who built the entire foundation knows precisely which pillar to pull to make the whole house collapse on those who betrayed him.